The rain hammered against the tall glass windows of the penthouse, a symphony of chaos that matched the storm inside her chest. Amelia stood frozen, one hand pressed against her swollen belly, the other clinging to the velvet curtain as if it were her only anchor to reality. Across the room, her husband, the man she had loved, trusted, and built her world around, was whispering sweet promises into the ear of a glamorous model half her age. Her heart shattered in silence, the muffled sound of her pulse drowning beneath the laughter that wasn't hers. In that moment, a cruel truth cut through her like lightning. The man she thought would protect her until the end of time had already abandoned her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to rise even from betrayal, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support keeps these powerful, life-changing stories alive. Amelia had never been the type to flaunt her wealth, her family name, or the empire that ran silently in her shadow. To the world, she was the devoted wife of Christopher Hale, the ruthless young CEO who had built his name in finance with charm and cunning. Few knew that Amelia herself was the daughter of the brilliant tech pioneer who had revolutionized the industry years ago. She had chosen a simple life, far away from the press, far away from the spotlight, believing that true love did not need wealth as proof. She had hidden her identity even from Christopher, trusting that love untainted by money was the only love worth keeping. But what she didn't know was that the man she gave her heart to was blinded by greed, and the moment temptation knocked, he opened the door without hesitation. The betrayal unfolded slowly, like poison seeping through veins. At first, it was late-night meetings that never ended, perfume on his suits that wasn't hers, cold silence in the mornings that used to be filled with warmth. And then, one evening, with courage shaking in her bones, Amelia followed him. What she saw in the lavish hotel suite destroyed the last illusions she had carefully held onto. Christopher in the arms of the model who had been featured on magazine covers, her laughter echoing like a cruel dagger. That night, Amelia drove home through streets blurred by tears, gripping the steering wheel as her unborn child kicked within her. She whispered promises to her baby, not to Christopher, but to the life she carried. You will be loved. You will be safe. I will never let anyone break us again. When Christopher finally filed for divorce, he did it with cold precision, treating Amelia like a liability to be erased. He gave her no alimony, no comfort, no dignity. The world whispered rumors, painting Amelia as the fragile, abandoned wife who wasn't good enough for the glamorous CEO. Christopher paraded his new love across red carpets, his hand proudly gripping the model's waist as cameras flashed. And yet, behind the glitz and the headlines, Amelia retreated into silence, carrying the weight of heartbreak while preparing to welcome her child into a world that suddenly felt unforgiving. But what Christopher never realized was that Amelia was not the fragile flower he assumed her to be. She was the heir to one of the most powerful tech empires in the country, a dynasty built not on vanity but on innovation. Her father had passed away, leaving the company in her quiet hands, though she had chosen to remain invisible. Now, abandoned, betrayed, and carrying her child, Amelia made the choice to step out of the shadows. The transformation was not overnight. She spent sleepless nights in the company's research labs, learning every detail, every innovation, every patent that had been entrusted to her family. With resilience and determination, she turned pain into power. The world that once whispered of her as the forgotten wife, soon began to speak her name with awe. Investors rallied behind her vision, tech leaders recognized her brilliance, and her company surged into the headlines, not as her father's legacy but as Amelia Hale's empire. Christopher watched from the sidelines, smug at first, certain she would fail. But when her face began appearing on magazine covers, not as the wife of a CEO but as one of the most powerful women in the industry, his smugness turned to unease. The woman he had discarded was no longer in the shadows. She was rising, and her light was too bright to ignore. Years passed, and Amelia's life became one of strength, resilience, and love for her child. Her son grew up watching his mother transform pain into greatness, learning from her that dignity mattered more than revenge, and that success was not about destroying others but about rising with integrity. Amelia had no need to humiliate Christopher, though the world itself had done it for her. While his company crumbled from reckless decisions and his so-called love affair fizzled out, Amelia's empire soared higher, built on intelligence, patience, and vision. And then came the day when their paths crossed again. It was at a global summit, where industry leaders gathered to discuss the future of technology. Amelia entered the hall, her presence commanding every gaze, her son walking proudly beside her. Christopher sat at the end of the table, older, weary, and hollow, the spark in his eyes long gone. He looked at her with something between regret and disbelief, as if finally realizing the treasure he had once thrown away. But Amelia didn't pause, didn't falter. She looked past him, focused only on the future she had built for herself and her child. Her victory was not in seeing him broken, it was in knowing she had survived, risen, and thrived despite the betrayal. Her story became a symbol, a beacon for women who had been broken, for anyone who had been abandoned, for all who thought their worth was measured by someone else's love. Amelia's life whispered a simple truth: the end of one chapter does not mean the end of your story. Sometimes, it is only the beginning of the most powerful journey you were meant to take. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life, stories that remind us all of the strength within us. Right finger special request. Tell us in the comments, what part of Amelia's journey inspired you the most?